We begin formally. Namaskar. Good evening to those who are in this side of the world, and good morning for those who are in the other side. On behalf of the Center for Comparative Literature, Visva-Bharati, I welcome all of you. 100 years ago, on November 1924, Rabindranath Tagore visited Buenos Aires. It was supposed to be a long trip to various Central and South American countries, which finally happened to be a couple of months' stay in Buenos Aires. The impact of this visit, however, was profound, which our center, plan to recollect here, not just today in this meeting, but we actually plan to have a series of lectures on this. Today, we begin with the story of the direct contact between Rabindranath and Ocampo. The history of the contact is widely known, and our objective today is rather to the milieu. Professor María Rosa Lojo, who is a famous Argentine author and who in 2004 published a novel called Las Libres del Sur, which has been translated into English as María Rosa Lojo will talk about this book and will also read some excerpts from this, which will be followed by Dr. Rafique-Chowdhury's Bangla translation of that book. And today, as chair, we have Professor Shyama Prasad Ganguly. We would move on to the speakers, but before that, let me introduce the speakers more formally. Professor María Rosa Lojo, Director of the Center for Critical Editions and Critical Studies on Argentine Literature at the Faculty of Philosophy, Letters, and Oriental Studies of the Universidad de El Salvador, is also a poet, storyteller, and novelist. She was born in Buenos Aires. A renowned scholar, Professor Lojo has a number of academic publications to her credit, as well as poems, novels, and short stories. She has published 4 books of lyrical microfictions or prose poetry, which have been compiled in Bosque de Ojos, and a collection of poems. Her first novel, La Pasión de los Nómades, was published in 1994. The novel that we are going to discuss, Las Libres del Sur, was published in 2004. And her short story collections also include Cuerpos Resplendantes, Así los trata la muerte, and several others. Jointly with visual artist Leonor Beuther, Professor Lojo published an illustrated album. Many of her works have been translated into English, French, Italian, Galician, Thai, and Bulgarian language, including some award-winning translations. Professor Lojo's literary genius has been acknowledged widely with many awards and recognitions. In 2023, her novel, Lo que hicieron ahí, was included in the key titles program of the Argentine Chancellery and was declared of interest for communication and culture by the legislature of the autonomous city of Buenos Aires. In 2004, Professor Lojo received the prestigious Esteban Echeverría National Prize. In 2009, the Hispanic Heritage Medal. In 2018, she received the Life Achievement Award granted by the Argentine Writers Association, one of the highest literary prizes in Argentina. In 2020, the Argentine Poetry Foundation bestowed her with the Life Achievement Award. The legislative body of Buenos Aires City declared her as an outstanding personality of Buenos Aires in 2023. In 2024, she received the Laurel de Plata of the Buenos Aires Rotary Club as an outstanding personality. She was a member of the Great Jury of the CONEX Awards in 2024. She is a correspondent member of the North American Academy of the Spanish Language since 2015. Since 2017, she has been a member of the board of directors of the Fundación Sur, created by Victoria Ocampo. She is an honorary member of the Royal Galician Academy since 2020. Very recently, she has been elected a titular member of the National Academy of Sciences of Buenos Aires. Professor Lojo, we are extremely honored to have you. We also have among us Professor Abdullah Rafique-Um-Munir Chowdhury. He was born in Chattogram and studied at Kumilla Cadet College. At present, he teaches Spanish and Translation Studies at Institute of Modern Languages, University of Dhaka. He studied modern languages and comparative literature in London and went on to complete another master's degree in translation studies at the Universitat Pompeu Fabra, Barcelona, Spain. He is a translator, writer, and editor with more than 10 books to his credit. He has translated fiction, nonfiction, and poetry from Spanish and English into Bangla. He has received several awards for his translation works, including Bangla Academy Award in 2022. He is now translating Las Libres del Sur into Bangla. As our chair today, we are extremely honored to have Professor Shyama Prasad Ganguly. He is a former professor of Spanish and Latin American Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He specialized in economic and comparative culture studies. He taught economics in Delhi University from 1967 to 77, then moved on to Indo-Hispanic studies. He has done pioneering work on comparative cultures, especially on Rabindranath's reception in Spain and Latin America and reception of El Quijote in India. He has authored, edited, translated more than 26 books, including bilingual versions of Indian, Spanish, and Latin American poetry. He has also published numerous articles on Spanish and Latin American studies and has also guided research works on these fields. He has visited several countries to deliver lectures and has received the highest civilian honors of Spain, Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Peru, and Colombia, and an honorary doctorate degree. He is a member of many international academic bodies and journals. He has served as interpreter to various heads of states and governments, and he has also been involved in serious theater for the 6 decades. Now, I would request our speaker, Professor María Rosa Lojo, to begin, and I would request Professor Ganguly to chair this session.
Well, thank you so much. Good morning from Buenos Aires and good evening or afternoon for you.
Good.
Evening, I guess. I'm really very honored to be here. I thank you very, very much for this invitation, so meaningful to me. Well, I'll speak about this novel, Las Libres del Sur, who has been several times published. The first edition in 204, and it was translated into English by a renowned scholar, Professor Dr. Norman Chill. Here is the Canadian edition, and well, I'll read fragments from the novel in English as better as I can. Just to give you an idea of what it is about. I try to offer a view of Victoria Ocampo's process of transforming herself into a writer and a publisher, a founder of a great Argentinian review, Sur, that costed her quite a lot. It wasn't easy for a woman. It was really a great enterprise. And she has to overcome many obstacles. Many obstacles who indeed were also into herself. She lacked of self-confidence at first. She didn't know if he really was capable of to accomplish that purpose, but well, finally, eventually, she succeeded. Well, the novel begins in 1924. Victoria had decided to offer hospitality to the great poet Tagore in Buenos Aires, not in her house, not in their Victoria Ocampo's village, Villa Ocampo. She couldn't at that time offer that place. She had to hire Mira el Rio, a beautiful house with a great garden, a big garden. But well, she did her best to make Tagore feel safe, loved, cherished, and she tried to protect him from his many admirers. He had many admirers in Buenos Aires. Well, I begin by the beginning. Victoria has just is entering the house, and she has two persons waiting for her. Tagore's secretary, Leonard Elmhirst, and a fictional character in the novel, Carmen Bray, a Spanish young philologist and translator who has recently arrived in Buenos Aires. A vague shape was approaching along the little gravel path. White, floating, it seemed, as far as Carmen Bray's nearsighted eyes could make out, to be clad in silk. Its sprouted legs, eager, agile, softly dark, its ankle visible, flashes of calf rushing ahead, almost kicking at the shoes as though wanting to leave them behind. Then there were hands, too, swinging to the rhythm of silk, reddish chestnut hair beneath a small hat, a scintillating voice. The hand knocked at the door. The voice spoke, smiled, gave a few orders. Keys turned, releasing a gust of fresh air and perfume. The vague shape from the path filled the space of the doorway open to the living room. A woman, young, tall, of fair complexion. Is that she? Whispered Carmen in English. In the flesh, came the answer, also in English, from the blond young man standing by her side. The lady in white, though the decisiveness of her movements was not especially ladylike, advanced without hesitation, brusquely, until she stood before them. She extended her hand to the man. Then she turned to Carmen, studying her with surprise. She spoke in English, perhaps out of courtesy to the foreign young man who wouldn't have found it easy to follow them in Spanish. Are you Miss Carmen Bray, the one Bébé recommended? But you're scarcely more than a child of elementary school by the looks of you. Don't be alarmed. I've just finished university. People are deceived by my size and my round face. And you must be Senora Ocampo de Estrada, are you not? Call me Victoria. Don't worry about your round face. You'll be grateful for it when you start aging like me. You, goodness, anyone should be lucky to age so. The young woman called Victoria smiled, openly coquettish. She had beautiful teeth, thought Carmen, and her dark eyes sparkled as brightly as her voice. Will you excuse us for a moment, Mr. Elmhirst? I have a few things to explain to Miss Bray. Of course, Victoria, I'll be here at your service, as always. The voice was neutral, but not the smile, ironic, slightly vexed. Only Carmen glimpsed it before they left the living room. Victoria, looking straight ahead, hadn't noticed. Victoria opened the door of a small study. It smelled of freshly waxed wood. It smelled of freshly waxed wood, and the fragrance of wax blended with the smell of honeysuckle and roses, whose immoderate size accorded with the vastness of the whole land, including the river with oceanic pretensions that could be seen from the corridor. Now, tell me about yourself. Just arrived from Madrid, right? 1 week ago. Señora de Lizalde, told me Maria de Maestu was your mentor. I lived in the residence for young ladies when I was studying philology at the university. You have no idea how lucky you are. My parents never considered it proper that I go to university. As for living in a residence for young ladies, forget it. Not even if Santa Teresa herself were in charge. Now I'll explain why I need your services and what they entail. You probably know that I've just installed the poet Tagore here at this estate. Mr. M has told me I haven't seen the poet yet. He's resting. He does well to rest. In fact, he was on his way to Peru, but the doctors forbade him to cross the Andes and ordered total rest. So I arranged that he stay in this house for as long as he needs. Goodness, to offer you anything. Would you like a cold drink or a cup of tea? Tea, please. Victoria pressed a buzzer on the desk. A middle-aged man appeared immediately. Jose, Miss Bray is going to be lodging with us for a while. She will be dealing directly with Mr. Elmhirst and Master Tagore. Should any difficulty arise in serving our guests, you and the staff can go to her for help. Be so kind as bring us tea for two. Sure, Carmen, that you can hardly believe your good luck. Just imagine meeting Tagore out here on these pampas and the privilege of keeping him company throughout his entire stay here. I'd change places with you with pleasure. Carmen Bray scrutinized, perplexed, the open and luminous face of her interlocutor. I beg your pardon, but isn't this your house? Aren't you going to stay here? No, this isn't my house. It's the estate of a cousin. I am living nearby at the Villa Ocampo, my parents' place, and I don't have permission to lodge the poet there. My cousin has lent me Miral Rio for the week. If Tagore needs more time, I'll pay whatever rent she asks for. Oh, I see. Don't get the idea I'm awash in cash, but I do have jewelry I can sell, and I'll put it to good use. Tagore is worth it. More than worth it, much more. Let me put it this way. The opportunity to host Tagore has no price for me. Jose arrived with a tea tray. They brew it strong here. In the thick, aromatic leaves gathered in the strainer, Carmen Bray would have liked to read, if not a map of her future destiny, then a code for deciphering the tacit laws of the land now receiving her, or those of the millionaires who governed that land. Could Senora Ocampo's parents really consider a Nobel Prize in Literature to be an undesirable guest? Did they take him for a starving bohemian from the Rue Gauche? Or were they trying to undermine the authority of their capricious heiress, annoy her as she annoyed them by courting friendships outside her class and its customs? No doubt about it, she looked fully capable of selling any jewel bequeathed by the family that clipped her wings, so as to affirm the unyielding strength of her will. You'll see, Carmen, neither Tagore nor Elmhirst speaks English, and the household staff don't speak English. You'll see, Carmen, neither Tagore nor Elmhirst speak Spanish, and the household staff don't speak English. I plan to come every day, but I can't be here all the time. Just imagine how that would look. I want someone here who can make conversation with them, and not just about the weather. Someone who can let me know about any discomfort or worry they may have, things they mightn't mention to me personally out of courtesy. I suppose you're familiar with Tagore's work. Yes, I read his poetry, and I know his translator, Zenobia Camprovi. Well, that was the beginning, and Victoria Ocampo was really flushed with Tagore's presence and visit. But it wasn't always easy between them. Tagore didn't know what to think about that impressive young woman, very determined young woman who adored him. But sometimes he didn't understand what feelings indeed she had for him. He didn't share the same tastes, and above all, he didn't understand what kind of country Argentina was. I'll read a fragment. I may title it "An Inferno of Subtle Misunderstandings." There were many misunderstandings between Tagore and Victoria, and one of those situations happened within the context of a visit to a great estancia, a great household in Argentina land, in the Pampa, precisely. Martinez de Oz family's house. Well, Victoria thought that Tagore would be thrilled. He had expressed several times his desire to know the Pampa. He had read William Henry Hudson, a writer who wrote about 19th century Pampa. But, well, changes had been made since then, and the Pampas were not the same. So, Victoria is trying to introduce Tagore to that place. She thinks it's wonderful, but Tagore is not. Doesn't share the same opinion. Finally, he said to Carmen, he is Tagore, he was going to see the Pampa described by Hudson. The adobe huts roofed with straw, the marshes overflown by herons and flamingos, the people who lived off the land with their little domestic gods, a crucifix or a plaster virgin, the horsemen who slept out on the range under a ringing clamor of stars, or even in the saddle if need be. All they had witnessed up to this point, however, was an ever closer view of a harmonious park traced by the precise pencil of a landscape designer, and an enormous house with the bearing of a castle. Fortunately, all things considered, Tagore and Elmhirst had their backs to that scene, and only she and Victoria, sitting opposite, could see it. Carmen admired the high walls partially covered in ivy. Some whimsical millionaire had managed to use the magic carpet of fortune to transport almost intact a portion of English countryside, but Gurudev didn't feel like Lord Fauntleroy entering the noble mansion of his forebears. He disembarked slowly, helped by Elmhirst, scanning left and right through his telescope without finding anything to relieve his great perplexity, only a picture-perfect tableau of turrets and cypresses. The carriage left them relatively far away from the main door. We mustn't deprive ourselves of the pleasure of a walk, especially at this time of day, said Victoria. Carmen agreed. Their feet turned up a green, rain-soaked, earthen odor. The transparent silence filtered the last bird calls, the bleating and mooing of livestock being herded into stables nearby but out of sight. The interior of the house was like the exterior. impeccably British. Tagore's room, grand as a hall, was dominated by a four-postered bed enclosed with curtains of incarnadine damask. The thickly waxed woodwork impregnated the room with its perfume. Well, Gurudev, there you have it. I can't hardly believe we're finally here after so much wishing for it. We can spend tomorrow touring the countryside. So, what do you think of my friend's house? Tagore looked at the Chippendale table, the Queen Anne chairs, the china work, the lace tablecloths. I don't know what to say, Vijaya. Are your friends British? No, of course not. They are the Martinez de Oz family, completely Argentine. I think then that this house is full of unmeaning things. Why do they copy everything? Victoria turned red. She was furious, thought Carmen, but in front of Tagore she always held her tongue. Hours later, while strolling together in the garden, its colors washed out by the moon, Victoria unburdened herself. He's unjust, unreasonable. I don't understand him, and he doesn't understand us. Would Martinez de Oz house have English furniture? Why wouldn't Martinez de Oz house have English furniture since they've all been educated in England? What's more, the house has been decorated in the finest taste. They aren't cheap reproductions, they are genuine antiques. Every single piece has been chosen for a reason to be placed in a particular place. What kind of furniture does he want us to use? We're supposed to sit on cow skulls like gauchos? The week spent in the countryside at Chapalmadal was turned into a small inferno of subtle misunderstandings, and the furniture, which annoyed Tagore the afternoon he arrived, continued to be a source of discord. And Tagore called Baudelaire, idolized by Victoria, your furniture poet, when she'd insisted on translating for him those lines that speak of the secret room set aside by lovers for their love. Gleaming furniture polished by time, floral essences and amber, inset mirrors, oriental splendor. What splendor? Tagore wanted to know. What furniture? What oriental luxuries? Santiniketan we make do with a bowen mat for our rest, and a veranda to watch evening fall and enjoy the cool air. Your furniture poet sounds like a huckster of an auction house. Nevertheless, Tagore, intentionally or not, wrote at Chapalmadal his own Baudelairean poem. It was titled A Skeleton, as though evoking, if only perhaps to refute it, Baudelaire's In Charonne. Victoria found the poem insulting, not on account of the French bard she so admired, but to herself. You see, Carmen, remember he translated the poem for us that same morning, not long after writing it. Just look at what he's given me now, after I asked him to copy it out for me. It's nothing like the original text. It's mutilated. He's ripped the hair out of it, its marrow, its essence. Carmen read the criminal evidence, which Victoria was waving in triumph. Her observation was quite accurate, as Victoria nearly always was in her literary opinions. It's a version adapted for idiots. Do you know what he told me when I demanded an explanation? That he'd modified a few things because he didn't think they were of any concerns to us Westerners. That night, Tagore, at the dinner table, read them the last and definitive version of the poem as a gesture of peace. Carmen copied it by hand in a notebook. She would read it again many years later to lament the death of unimaginable war. Her thought then was that Gurudev had lost his wife and several children, all of them having breathed their last in his arms. In the bosom of sufferings, I have found the secret path of delight. I have heard in my being the voice of eternal silence, have seen tracks of light across the empty desert of the dark. Death, I accept not from thee that I am a gigantic jest of God, that I am the annihilation built with all the wealth of the infinite. Well, it comes the time when Victoria and Tagore had to bid farewell to each other. Tagore is departing from Buenos Aires, and well, he has written a very significant poem. Tempt me not to load my boat with debt, the poem says, but give me leave to go away empty-handed, lest the price of love that you recklessly pay should only reveal the poorness of my heart. I can't but litter your life with the torn shreds of my pain, and keep you awake at night with the moan of my lonely dreams. It is better that I remain speechless and help you to forget me. Victoria looked up from the piece of paper she was reading, its ink barely dry. Tears ran down her cheeks. Do you think these words are going to be a comfort to me, Gurudev? Do you really believe so? They're beautiful, but beauty too can hurt if it is true. What will my life be like? What will my life be like without you? Weren't you living before I came along? I won't forget you either, Vijaya. Never. And I hope you'll pay me a visit in return. Come see me at Santiniketan. But we'll both go our separate ways, each in our own time and place, richer than we were before our time together. We must continue to live, you above all. Me? Why me above all? Because there is much to do here, and that responsibility falls to you. This country, your country, has not yet seen its face in the mirror. Look at how they educate children. Only with books, foreign books. They prefer to send them to Europe or England rather than have them travel in their own land. Not like the Incas, who had no books or even written language, who never crossed the sea, and yet what wonders in science, in agriculture, in arts, and in architecture as well. You have to learn to look to yourselves rather than looking always to Europe. But we are Europeans, transplanted Europeans. Well, transplants to other climes always produce fruits and species with distinct peculiarities. And don't include yourself in that plural form, my dear Vijaya. Fortunately, you are not only European. Rather, you are not a European. If you were, I wouldn't find you nearly so interesting. Tagore approached and kissed Victoria on the brow, as was his custom when greeting her or taking his leave. Now I must back write some letters. Don't fret. You'll come to understand what I'm telling you. Rest assured that the children of your social class would be much happier if, instead of being kept in expensive cages with unnatural food, they were taught to live in what used to be called the here, the tierra adentro, the hinterland, 1 year in each of the major regions of the country. Their parents would economize a great deal by maintaining them almost in wild, primitive, like Robinson Crusoe, rather than paying for residencies at European colleges and universities where it is impossible to learn to be truly Argentine. The master sat down at his desk in front of the window. Victoria left the room. She sat down with Carmen on the balcony and began drying her tears of heartbreak, anarchically mixed with tears of fury. He'll never quite understand me. I mean, he'll never understand me. Do you understand him? No one could understand him more profoundly, I believe. I've lived in his poems and for his poetry. I've recited them like prayers. They may even have made me a little better. I owe them that. But in literature, there's always something more than what we read in it. Maybe we see only the part that fits with us, maybe we see only the part that fits with or corresponds to our own existence. And besides, he is more than his words. He's also outside them, in the world and a life that goes beyond them. You may be right, Carmen, but I find it hard to accept. While he was living here, if I wasn't sleeping outside his door like a domestic animal, it was only because our habits and norms don't permit it. Everyone would have thought it improper. Sir Rabindranath Tagore and Leonard Ernst, B.A., left Buenos Aires on January 3rd, 1925, on board the Giulio Cesare. Victoria Ocampo, efficient to the end, obtained free passage for them, thanks to a family friendship with the shipping line's president. The poet's stateroom had a sleeping berth and small writing room. Victoria had insisted that he take, as a gift, his favorite wicker chair, in which he had spent so much time gazing at the river. Since it wouldn't pass through the stateroom's narrow entrance, Senora Ocampo ordered the door removed. She was obeyed. Later, Tagore would write her that he could no longer do with the wicker chair, blaming such an odd dependence to a form of delayed revenge by Vijaya and her butler. He used the chair constantly in India until his dying day. Victoria Ocampo would never set foot on Indian soil, neither while Tagore was alive, not after his death, although the poet never stopped sending letters inviting her to visit. Only there, she thought, only on that land and beneath those skies would those who loved him come to know him as he really was. The youth, however, see each other again in Paris, where Victoria organized an exhibition of his painting. They bid each other adieu in London in 1930, unaware that never again would they touch or listen to one another. Well, thank you so much for your attention, and please, my apologies for the many imperfections in the reading. I'm not an actress, and of course, English is not my mother tongue. So my apologies again.
Professor Lojo, that was wonderful. I'm sure we would love to have a discussion on this, but we could move on to Professor Chowdhury, have his translations, and maybe then we can have a discussion with both of you. So,
Thank you so
Professor
much.
Chowdhury.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
শুভ সন্ধ্যা, আসসালামু আলাইকুম, নমস্কার, buenas tardes y buenos días por ustedes que están en Buenos Aires o en alguna parte de Argentina. My sincere thanks to the Center for Comparative Literature of Visva-Bharati, and I am really honored and delighted to be part of this program. I must confess that I would love to be rather a listener than a speaker. My role is as a translator. I would, I prefer to be invisible than visible. My job is with paper and pen, and do those search, research, and all those scrutiny things. And so anyway, it's my pleasure to be here. First of all, let me give my personal thoughts about this book and this translation project, and then I will read a few part of it in Bangla, of course. Now, the question is, but first of all, I must pay my profound admiration for our Rabindranath Tagore and Victoria Ocampo, because they are the connector, right? And I'm one of those mediator, you can say the cultural mediator, who is trying to make a bridge between Argentina and Bangla, or Spanish and Bangla, or between Rabindranath and Victor Ocampo through the translation of this particular novel written by none other than Senora Maria Rosa Lojo. Now, I was asking myself, like, why these texts? Because as you know, I have tried to translate few of the texts from Spanish American literature. But why these texts? This text is different than any other text that I have translated before. Actually, this text came to me rather than I was in search of it. I must mention a name. His name is Axel, a good friend of me and Senora Maria, who lives in Argentina. So me and Axel's friendship goes for at least more than 10 years. So Axel introduced me to this text some 7 years ago, and then I somehow got the version of this. It's published by Debol CEO, and you see the name of this book is Las Libres del Sur, and it is written here kind of a subtitle, Una novela sobre Victor Ocampo. So a novel about Victor Ocampo. And some 2.5 years ago, one of the leading publishers of Bangladesh, Prothoma, contacted me, and they were telling me, like, there's this novel written by Maria Rosa Lojo, and it's published from Argentina. It's about Rabindranath and Victor Ocampo. Would you love to translate it? Can you please check it, and could you give it a try? And I told them, look, I have already got the version, and I have already got the permission by Senora Maria to translate this novel from Spanish into Bangla. So I have just started working on it. So they were very happy. So in 3 to 4 months' time, I will finish the rest of it. I'm in the middle of it, in the whole process, and they will publish it maybe in March or April next year, hopefully. And so this is why, this text came to me. But I have had probably, I don't know, like, I have been taking this preparation subconsciously, maybe for many, many years, since I read that wonderful book by none other than written by our Professor Ganguly, Shashwato Mouchak, and another book in English by Professor Kethuki Kushari Dyson, In Your Blossoming Flower Gardens. And when I started translating this particular novel, first of all, I read it, and then I had to go through the understanding of this text. And I did a little bit of research to understand the discourse of time. Because if you have the book, and if you open the pages and go through it, you'll see, like, the novel is divided into 4 different chapters. And the timeline is from 1924 to 1931. So 1931 is the year when Victor Ocampo started publishing this wonderful, world-renowned magazine called Sur. But the novel started in 1924 when Rabindranath landed in Buenos Aires on way to Peru. He was supposed to go to Peru, but he could not, as we know the story. So this, like, 6-7 years period is the time period of this novel. But on a larger note, like, it is the beginning of 20th century. And funny enough, last week I was actually with some of my students. We were discussing Martin Fierro of one of the classics of Argentine literature. And this, the late 19th century and early 20th century, that is the time which I had to understand really well to put myself into this difficult task of translating these texts to understand the context. And textually, it is not like a fictional novel. It is, of course, fiction, but it's not like any other fictional novel that we come to know of. Like, it is a mixed, I would say, like it's a novel which has many different shades. It's like a mixed genre. Some parts are historical, some parts are like kind of biographical, some parts are based on real events, and then there are, of course, imagination and fictional elements is there. So altogether, it's a different kind of exercise in writing a novel based on the life of Victor Ocampo. So as I mentioned, that there are 4 parts. The first part deals with Rabindranath landing in Buenos Aires. And then there is another 3 parts, which also deals with Victor Ocampo's life, of course, but with other people, other renowned personalities that had a tremendous, like, I would say, like, kind of effect on her life, including the great Spanish philosopher and José Ortega y Gasset. So this is the like, and then the interesting part is, like, the story starts in 1924, just 100 years before, around 1820, 21, 23. All those countries, including Argentina, got independence from the Spanish colony. So from the late 19th century and it's the early 20th century, the whole society was going through many changes. And when Maria was reading from the novel in English, she was mentioning a particular term called estancia, where, like, the house was where Rabindranath lived for more than a month or so. So I had to understand what is estancia, because we have casa and then estancia. So all these things, and it is something to do with the society and the kind of class division and culture, of course. So I had to understand and read all those cultural, sociological context of the time period in which the novel is set before starting my translation from Spanish to Bangla. Like, some parts was really interesting and easy for me to translate, because as we can see, the very beginning of the novel, in the beginning of the novel, there is one line from Rabindranath. Actually, Senora Maria translated this sentence, I would say, like, maybe from English, or maybe where she took it from, I don't know, but it is actually written in Bangla by Rabindranath. So in Spanish, it's y las palabras no venían bien. So it's like mentioned, the reference is from Gitanjali, 1924. So I had to look for it in Gitanjali, and the Bangla was Amar Badhenai she kotha. So there, like, these sort of parts are there in the text, taken directly from Rabindranath's verses. So I had to look for the Bangla original sources, and I just use them from there. But other than that, I had to do a lot of intertextual reading, and there are reference to different personalities, a lot of allusions there, and her style of writing in this particular novel is not, I wouldn't say like a straightforward, like it's a linear narrative, but again, there's some some interesting digression, I would say, taken from here and there, and the sentences are quite interesting too, and challenging, not at times very challenging, not necessarily straightforward to translate. I had to think and think and think. and to make it readable and understandable in Bangla. Okay, so let me read a few parts in Bangla. Please excuse me because this is still a kind of a draft version, so there are some mistakes there. Please, I ask your forgiveness. Yeah. So this is the beginning in 1924, 1924. I read it in Bangla, of course. ভাসমান কাঁকর বিছানো ছোট পথ ধরে এগিয়ে এলো রেখাটি, ফর্সা একজোড়া পা, কার্মেন ব্রেয়ের ক্ষীণ দৃষ্টির চোখে যতটুকু দেখা সম্ভব, ঈষৎ তামাটে, হাঁটু উদ্ভাসিত, চঞ্চলা, উদ্বিগ্ন, বেরিয়ে এলো চকিতে, ঝকঝকে জুতা, হুড়মুড়িয়ে পড়ছে পায়ের পেছনের পেশল অর্ধাংশ এমন ভাবে যেন ওগুলোকে পেছনে ফেলে দ্রুত এগিয়ে যেতে যাওয়া যায়। বেঁধে যায় প্রায় জোড়ার সঙ্গে সংঘর্ষ হয়, ছোট টুপির নিচে লালচে রেশমের ওঠানামার সঙ্গে সঙ্গতিপূর্ণ ভাবে। হাতও আছে আছে কণ্ঠস্বর, আর আলোয় ঝলকানিতে বাদামি চুল ঝলমল করছে। হাসলো, কণ্ঠস্বর, কথা বলল, টোকা দিল দরজায়, হাতটি ভরিয়ে ছড়িয়ে পড়লো সতেজ হাওয়া আর সুরভি। পথরেখাটি নারী ছিল সে কম বয়সী, এক তুল্য, বৈঠকখানার খোলা দরজার শূন্যতা অমলিন। এরপরে একটা সংলাপ, there is a dialogue. জানতে চাইলো কার্মেন ফিসফিস করে, তিনিই নাকি। Now here comes Victoria Ocampo. Like Carmen is this Carmen Bray, who is kind of the second most important character in this novel, who is actually, through her we see the scenarios unfolding. Okay, and the main two protagonists in this first part, Rabindranath and Victoria Ocampo, are there, like, and there as you just listen to Maria's reading and you could understand. তিনি নাকি জানতে চাইলো কার্মেন ফিসফিস করে। পাশে দাঁড়িয়ে থাকা সোনালী চুলের ছেলেটি জবাব দিল, সশরীরে একেবারে আদ্যপান্ত, চলাফেরা দেখে নানা সিদ্ধান্ত সম্ভ্রান্ত ফর্সা নারীটি উপস্থিত হলো রূঢ় ভঙ্গিতে, এগিয়ে এলো। তাকে নারী ছাড়া আর কি বা বলা যায়। অবাক স্থির চোখে কার্মেনের দিকে হাত বাড়িয়ে দিল তাদের সামনে, হয়তো বিদেশিদের প্রতি সৌজন্য বশতাই তার খাতিরে। কথা বলল ইংরেজিতে, স্বাভাবিক কথাবার্তা ভঙ্গিতে, সন্দেহ এই ভেবে যে কাস্টিয়ানোতে সে হয়তো স্বাভাবিক কথাবার্তা চালিয়ে যেতে পারবে না। তারপর বেবে যার কথা বলেছে, আপনি কি সেই সিনিয়রিতা কার্মেন ব্রেই? সবে মাত্র পেরিয়েছেন হাই স্কুলের গণ্ডি, কিন্তু মনে হয় ভয় পাবেন না। আমার আকার মাত্র বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় থেকে পাশ করে বেরিয়েছি, আকৃতি আর গোলগাল চেহারা দেখে আমার আকার দেখে ভয় পাবেন না, মানুষ ভুল করে। আপনি তো সেনিয়রা ওকাম্পো দে এস্ত্রাদা, তাই না? আমাকে ভিক্টোরিয়া ডাকুন। So this is interesting, like this Carmen is asking her to call her asking her like, you are that Senora Ocampo de Estrada, no? And then Victoria is telling her, no, just call me Victoria. So there is another very interesting part in this novel is actually the women's issues. As you see, we know like Victoria Ocampo is a great lady. She, as Maria told us, she had to fight along through her life to reach where she reached, no? So anyway, let me go back to my reading. আমাকে ভিক্টোরিয়া ডাকুন, ওই গোলগাল চেহারা নিয়ে চিন্তার মোটেই কোনো তখন মনে শান্তি হবে, আমার মতো তখন বুড়িয়ে যাবেন, কারণ তাহলে তো যে কেউ বুড়িয়ে যেতে চাবে, বলেন কি আপনার মতো? এবং হেসে উঠলো খোলামেলা ভিক্টোরিয়া, যা নারীটি কম বয়সী আর গাঢ় চোখগুলো এত অপূর্ব, কণ্ঠস্বরটাও, ভাবলো কার্মেন। So I will pause here and go directly to the last bit, and I'll read something from there where our Rabindranath appears. Okay. যে নামেই তাকে ডাকুন না কেন, রবি বাবু বা গুরুদেব, তার রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর, ব্রিটিশ সাম্রাজ্যের এককালে তিনি জন্মেছিলেন এক দেশে, পৃথিবীর এক জনবহুল ও বৈচিত্র্যময় এক দেশের এক শহরে, রাজধানী, যেই দেশের রাজধানী সেটা সেই দেশের রাজধানী, যার নাম কলকাতা। সিলভিও সেসিলিও ওকাম্পো রোগেইরা গৃহকর্তৃত্বের বাবা এক অখ্যাত প্রজাতন্ত্রের অভব্য বন্দরে বুয়েনোস আইরেসে জন্মেছিলেন একই বছরে, বহু বছর পরে, ব্রিটিশ সাম্রাজ্যের সবচেয়ে মূল্যবান মণিভুক্ত হিসেবে। কিন্তু যেমনটা হয়েছিল একলা কলকাতা, ধনী জমিদারদের ভূমি ছিল দুটোই। উঠবে ও প্রাচীন নিজকে সবসময় জেনে এসেছে শোষিত একটি দেশের এক দরিদ্র জনপদ আর একটা পরিণত হলো সৌভাগ্য আর there is some like here like some historical and cultural reference to the formation of Kolkata of the colonial period. So these are taken from the from historical perspective. And then in this part there is this part where she says, like, in the novel in Bangla, like now referring to Argentina of that period of time, সংস্কৃতির অঙ্গ হিসেবে যেখানে এমনকি ভিখারিরাও ঘোড়ায় চড়ে, রেফারিং টু দ্য গাউচো ট্র্যাডিশন, সদ্য নিজেকে মেলে ধরা এক জাতিতে চীনামাটির তৈরি, আর কিন্তু যে সংস্কৃতিটা আমদানি করে আনা হলো, তার অবশিষ্ট আর ওই পুরনো সংস্কৃতির অবশিষ্ট না কোনো আর কিছুই নিঃশেষিত হয়ে গেল সেটি ট্রেনের মতো। নগরের মানুষ বলতে কিছুই ভাবতে গেলে কাল্পনিক সেই বিস্তৃত মরুভূমিতে শিল্প আর মননের ফসল। গাউচো আর দেশীয় ইন্ডিরা ছিল প্রকৃতির সন্তান, ছিল না বিশ্বাসী আর যিশু খ্রিস্টের নীতিনিষ্ঠ। রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর অপছন্দ করতেন প্রাতিষ্ঠানিক এবং ব্রিটিশ শিক্ষা। তিনি স্কুলের অনুরাগী ছিলেন না, বিশেষ করে এখানে there is some lapse here, sorry. বোন স্বর্ণকবি দেবী তাকে উপনিবেশে পবিত্র ভাষার শিক্ষা দিয়েছেন, গান ও নাচ। অন্য বড় ভাই বোনেরাও শিখেছেন চিত্রকলা, সাহিত্যের পাঠ নিয়েছেন ইংরেজি ভাষার। ইংল্যান্ডে যৌবনে ভ্রমণে গিয়েছিলেন, তার মনে হয়েছিল ঈশ্বরের হাজারো শ্রদ্ধাও করেছেন। শেক্সপিয়ারকে পড়েছেন, কারণ শেক্সপিয়ার দেখিয়েছিলেন বর্বর কথাকে জাদুকরি ভাবে কিভাবে হাজির করা যায়। কেবল okay, now let me go to the another interesting part where Rabindranath arrives in Argentina. Rabindranath Tagore 1924 সালে বুয়েনোস আইরেসে এসে পৌঁছানোর বহু আগেই লিখে ফেলেছেন সাহিত্যে ছোট গল্প, নাটক, উপন্যাস, কবিতা, গান, নাটকে নির্দেশনাও দিয়েছেন। তিনি সুর সৃষ্টি করেছেন, শিশুতোষ রচনাও করেছেন। ছিলেন একজন নিঃসঙ্গ শিল্পের মতো সুকণ্ঠে গাইতে পারতেন, এবং তিনি ভারতবর্ষের একজন প্রেমিক পুরুষ। প্রতীচ্যে তার খ্যাতির কারণে বিস্মিত সাহিত্যের জন্য পাওয়া নোবেল দুটো ভিন্ন সমস্যার দোলাচলে করেছিলেন। তার জন্য ব্রিটিশ সাম্রাজ্যে দেওয়া নাইটহুড বিশেষ করে পুরস্কার ছিল একই সঙ্গে আনন্দের ও পরিতাপের। So I will just read the very last bit from this first chapter in my Bangla translation. এই আটকে পড়া পরিস্থিতিটাকেও কি স্নিগ্ধ একটা রাজত্বের মতো লাগছে। তাছাড়া পেছন দিকটার জীবনযাপন তো অত খারাপ না, এভাবে আয়েসের জীবনযাপন খারাপ না। তার খুব খুব পছন্দের উইলো কাঠের আরাম কেদারাটায় তিনি পা গা এলিয়ে দিলেন। ভেতরের একটা উদ্বেগ তাকে দুশ্চিন্তায় ফেলেছিল। টেলিস্কোপটা নিয়ে তিনি উদ্বেগটাকে ঝেড়ে ফেলতে চাচ্ছিলেন। এই সান এসিডোতেই তিনি কথা যে ভিক্টোরিয়া এসে উপস্থিত হলেন। মায়ের বাগান, এটা তার বাবার দিকের এক আত্মীয়ের বাগান বাড়ির গোলাপ দেখিতে নিয়ে যাবেন। থেকে থেকে প্রবল একটা ঘ্রাণ, বিবল করা বিচিত্র জীবন তার নাকে আসছিল। অপ্রত্যাশিত কোনো নৈবেদ্য নিয়ে আসে আনন্দ। সে তার সাধু পুরুষটি নিত্য আরাধনা থেকে সংশ্লিষ্ট রূপসী তরুণী এক স্বস্তির জন্য সারাক্ষণ ব্যাকুল। বহুদিন তিনি একা, উপেক্ষা করে তার মনে আঘাত দেওয়া কি সঙ্গত। শান্তিনিকেতন দীর্ঘ ভ্রমণ আর সময়ের বিপরীত স্রোত যে স্থানীয় এসে এই বসন্তে তার ক্লান্ত পীড়িত মন সত্যি কবিতার প্রেরণার জন্য লেখা একটা কবিতার শেষ চরণ তার মাথায়, বাংলায় নেমে তাকে ডাকতেন বিজয়া চরণ, তিনি আওড়ালেন কিছু। তোমারে যে জানি আমি জানি, কহিলে তেমনি স্বরে, শুনেছি তব গীতি, হে নারী জানি না তো ভাষা তব, চিরদিন আমারই অতিথি, প্রেমের অতিথি কবি। So I finished my reading here. Sorry, I'm extremely sorry for my haphazard sort of reading. This is still like a draft, like the publisher is going to edit the whole thing, and I will recheck, and then they will get it published in probably in March or April. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Professor Chowdhury. I would now request Professor Ganguly to take over.
Okay. I really don't. Well, muy buenos días y muy buenas tardes a todos. Es una gran oportunidad de poder interaccionar con varias personas de conocimiento de la literatura india, literatura argentina, literatura bengalí, etcétera, etcétera. Pero voy a, debido a la presencia de más de 26 personas, creo que son casi todos están escuchando la versión inglesa o la versión en bengalí. Entonces voy a hablar un poco lo que queda. Es que han cubierto ustedes todo. You have covered, both of you have covered almost everything. Let me make a few comments, although comments in the end, I do not know whether they matter at all or not. I am very impressed with the Bengali version that our friend from Bangladesh has produced. Whatever has come out, whatever he has recited, whatever he has, I have a translation theory in which I certainly hold that there should be, in such translation studies, there should be a co-participation by the translator, as well as the original language, speaker. So, but in this case, I can, while hearing him, I got a good sense of the points of the way in which the whole conversation, relationship between two people, Tagore and Victoria, that develops. It comes out more or less in a quite an acceptable manner, and I hope that he devotes a little more time to finish this properly, and I'm sure it will be a very, very acceptable, a very, very valuable contribution in the field of translation studies. The point that occurs to me is this whole problem between a reality that has occurred between two exceptional people and making out a novel out of it. So this whole problem becomes problematic unless you capture the most important elements in this relationship between the two persons. Now, in the I'm extremely happy, that during these last few years I was myself working on this whole area of Victoria, Ocampo, and Tagore. And I've written quite a few things. They're going to be published even in Argentina. I've written something since I have worked on the reception of Tagore in the whole of Hispanic America and in Spain. So a whole lot of Argentina has already figured in that writing. But Victoria Ocampo as such, as a personality, doesn't figure there prominently because it's a completely different part of the story where Tagore's presence as in Latin America as let's say the spiritual dimension, spiritual modernization that he introduces in Latin America in the 20th century, that is something different from how this interaction between him and Victoria takes place later. But in the so although the story that has been built has a suspense, has a very powerful kind of a effect on this relationship, but there are certain points which could have provided it further content. For example, the very beginning of Tagore's relation with Victoria. Now that does not take place in 1924. It takes place much earlier, and that is the point which I want to mention. Victoria, coming from a very, very well-to-do family, Argentina going through very troubled times at in that phase because of the presence of the two different kinds of forces fighting each other. Victoria belonging to the higher echelons of the society, she undergoes a different kind of training. She's very good in French and Portuguese, and in English not so well, but she belongs to a very, very well-to-do family. Now, one of the most negative factors in this kind of a situation in very, very well-to-do families is the control they exercise on the family members, particularly the younger people. And this is where begins the problem of Victoria Ocampo. And as she grows, she is not able to enjoy the kind of freedom she wants to enjoy in her life. Every moment of her life is controlled by forces, either by her parents or later by her husband or by her lover and two lovers. So she is so controlled that she is very, very frustrated in life. Now, this is the beginning of Victoria's protest against, or let's say, when you call it feminism, feminism is still not in vogue at that time, but this is where she wants the whole feminine idea to be very, very, open, to be equally respected, and to be, now this is where, she is looking for something which would give her that kind of freedom. And it is the first reading of Gitanjali, some poems, poem 5, poem 15, these poems of Gitanjali, that she really, the real teardrops that a humankind can shed come out of Victoria at that moment when she reads Tagore in those poems. and she finds that this is the kind of liberty she wants, and this is the beginning of that kind of liberty. Now, Victoria's beginning, life beginning, has to start from this kind of an incessant feminism, which develops into the kind of feminism which our novelist, our respected lady here, Rosa Maria, she develops later. So the first introduction of that kind of liberty comes from this reading of Tagore, and not only reading of Tagore, but also from reading of what comes out in the newspapers like La Nación. She's not only reading Tagore, but she's reading about Gandhi, for example. Some British scholar points to the fact that it is not the arma, it is not the alma that we should defend, it is the arma, it is the arms that we should defend in the West. It is not the alma which Tagore. So this tussle between the alma and the arma becomes a starting point for Victoria to think of what is good and what is bad. And it is the soul, development of the soul through the perfection of the self and of one's personality, which makes or creates the way for Victoria. Now, this happens much before 24, and it is just a casual chance that she meets Tagore. Otherwise, he was going to Peru. So, but she gets hold of Tagore when she finds that this is possible. She gets hold of Tagore, and this is the beginning of a different kind of relationship, where the first few months are spent in more being unsaid than said. This is what she says. There is more of that is unsaid than said. But slowly and gradually, this turns into much more dialogue, much more participation of other people, the important people, writers of Latin America, in which, unfortunately, Tagore does not take any interest. Now, this is one of the biggest losses for us Indians, that a person like Tagore did not take interest in all those writers who were gathered there, and were, Victoria Ocampo had wanted them to have a conversation. So she failed in that kind of a adventure. Together with this, her friendship, the kind of friendship, I have had a long discussion with Maria Renecura, with the writer, the biographer of Victoria Ocampo, Esther Vasquez, and we had a long discussion, and she was very, very, obviously she would know a little more than me of the situation prevailing at that time, and she was absolutely sure that although, the kind of friendship that the other people like Ortega y Gasset and like other European scholars who wanted to be very, like Waldo Frank, wanted to be near her, like even Elmhurst wanted to be near her, sexually. They could. Tagore was, of course, drawn to her, but it was not that kind of. It was neither totally spiritual, nor material, not physical, but there was something in between that ran between these three, which was very different from the kind of relations that these other Europeans wanted to have with her. So therefore, she was very, very drawn to him. It is because of these reasons. But of course, she was very, very restrained, of course, but she was extremely, happy that, Tagore would keep his relationship in the form of letters. Please read. I'm sure Maria Rosa has read all the letters that are there in Ketaki Kushari's Dyson's book. They have been reproduced. That is why that book is very, very, very useful, very useful. There is also the book by Shankha Ghosh that is in Bengali, and I must advise that all those who know Bengali must read that book in order to understand, the spirit of Victoria Ocampo from a Bengalese point of view, in which way she develops in that in that house, in that particular house. Now, the Nilanjana also has translated this book very well, with many notes and many endnotes, which are very, very useful. All these books must be read. We have also written quite a few things, and all that must be read together in order to understand this relationship. Now, one thing is very, very clear, that Tagore wanted to maintain a relationship which is mental and physical, but he would never go into those exchange of brain waves that talks between countries, that talks between nations. He is not ready to tell. He's going through hell about India. He's participating in so many things in India, against Gandhi, with Gandhi, and against so many other Britishers. And yet he is not ready to tell one single instance to Victoria Ocampo. It is only some spiritual, loving, notes and matters which exchange between only people who fall in love, who really want to. I mean, Victoria is so careful there. Victoria understands that, yes, Tagore wants to come to that level of writing also where he is free. But what did she do? When I was doing my research in Victoria's house, I found for the first time, which was very, very surprising, in one book, two letters which were written in handwritten letters by Victoria Ocampo. They were not touched. They had not been touched by anybody. They were folded, kept there. And what were those letters? I have produced that in a recent article, which is coming out very soon in a book in Argentina. Yeah, those letters will come out. They will show that she is writing a letter. She produces a full sentence and she rethinks about the sentence. She cuts out those sentences and produces such a kind of an impression of a sentence which occults, which hides the earlier freedom of that sentence. She is very, very careful. She's revising those scripts of her own before sending the final letter. So I have those two letters, which I have reproduced them there. You will see that she's so careful about writing those very letters. She's much more careful than Tagore is. But Tagore escapes through another route, which is that he is completely in in relation with another kind of a power, which is a godly power, which he calls his master. So he says, I am responsible to that master, that great master, and only to him I will produce, all my work. I have to respond to him. So therefore, I cannot fall into. So a person like me, a reader like me, I find then he is in love with Victoria Ocampo, but he's very careful that this is not taken as if he has completely surrendered himself. So he escapes through a route in which obviously he is thinking of so many kinds of, in his meditation, in his sadhana, in his personality, in his nationalism, in all these books, he is talking about those things which connects him to another power, which is a different power, which he calls master. So he's constantly in touch with that master. He wants to be in touch with master. That does not allow him to fall into. But he writes to his relations in Calcutta. He's writing from Argentina that I have not seen anyone in Bengal with this kind of a tremendous personality, who is completely free, who can do everything that she wants and says what she wants. I have not seen this kind of a personality. She's talking about Victoria in that terms. So, this kind of a vacillation between two ends, between two personalities. Now look, the description of Victoria of Tagore in the first place is what? It is, she had read, it is through the book of Hudson. That was the only book Tagore was carrying, that Hudson's books, and a few drawing papers, Peruvian drawing papers he was carrying. These were the only things he was trying. And what is there in that Hudson book? She describes that Hudson. She describes that when the sun falls through those jungles, through those trees, piercing those trees and those leaves, and finally touching the sky. You Tagore, you are that sky, and I am those leaves, I am those trees, I am those branches. I want to touch you, my branches. I am this sky, I am those branches who wants to touch the sky, and you are the sky. This was Hudson's metaphor, and this metaphor was taken by Victoria, and this was used later also when she finally strikes it down and introduces another sentence, so that she is not completely revealed in her physical sense. So these are some of the ways in which the relations between the two develop, from a point where they say much of their status was passed in moments which contained moments completely of unsaid words, into, or rather said words, from unsaid to said, but it changed into the said words only after. Now, the writer here gave an example of the poem Skeleton. Now, what is that skeleton poem? It is not exactly what she described. The Skeleton is a poem in which there is one paragraph. The skeleton, Tagore wrote that skeleton after watching the skeleton of a cow lying at a riverbed when he was coming back to his house in Miral Rio. And then he writes a poem on that skeleton. And that skeleton consists of two particular, very, very clear things. One is that the human being, our lives, but the other thing is our art. Our art. Does our art completely vanish when we die, when we are skeleton? It is completely gone. Now there is one paragraph, one stanza, which is mentioned, which she also mentioned, that skeleton congal. Now that paragraph mentions very clearly that there is a continuity between preservation, disappearance, preservation, conservation. Now this continuity of these things comes in art, and he describes how art maintains these preservation, conservation, death, continuity, preservation, etc., etc. And then when she asks him to fair that copy of that poem to him, he cuts out that stanza. And then she is very angry next day. Why? Because she says, Tagore, what have you done? Where is that stanza you had written about this continuity between preservation and death and preservation, death, and that takes place in art, and you had completely used the whole landscape of art in order to describe that. Where is that sentence? Where is that stanza? Then Tagore said, I completely eliminated it because I thought that you people here in this culture will not understand that. And that is what made Victoria very, very angry. He said, you don't even understand. How much do you know what we have gone through? What is the kind of 19th century end we have gone through? What are the two different kinds of forces that has fought between Argentina all the time? And finally, we have maintained the form that we called real art in Argentina. And this is what we have maintained. This is what and you are saying that we don't understand that? You have then not understood anything. Tagore never, Borges was there, Guiraldes was there. There were 3-4 more poets whom Victoria brought in order for them to have discussion. Tagore did not have any discussion with him. And he, of course, did not like Baudelaire's poem because of the furniture, him being a furniture poet, etc., which he finally, at the end of his life, he understood that he was wrong. He was wrong in that poem. Victoria Ocampo liked Baudelaire very much, but he didn't. And finally, he did. Now these things, these particular things constantly happen. He brought a whole band of music lovers, musicians. And Tagore was listening to those musicians from where? From the second floor, from the rooms, from the open windows. But he did not come down to listen to them because he did not like them. Now, these are some of the things that Victoria did not understand at all. Obviously, her personality had already developed to a point through all her participation. And then, of course, the establishment of Sur, in which, there were so many Argentine writers participated. one by one, writing about not just one thing, not just one side of the left-oriented thoughts or the right-oriented thoughts, but combining both the things. I have been doing this comparison between these things and looking at the thinking of Victoria Ocampo as a person who wanted Argentina to become a, she was so fascinated by works related to women. She even went to jail, and she actually had to be left out, taken out of the jail because of a letter from Nehru, from Jawaharlal Nehru. He wrote a letter to Peron, please, by 1968, when she was already ill, and Mrs. Gandhi had visited her. I knew the secretary of Rene Maria Cura so well. She left with me 12, 13 things which I finally gave to the Visva-Bharati, and she herself all the time maintained that it was neither a completely spiritual thing nor a completely material or physical thing, but there was something that we don't understand, that we can only understand if what Tagore did in his life, that is through his sadhana, through his such books, he is constantly thinking of something else. And this is what he wanted to bring to the students, not the regular school activities, but through Santiniketan, how students would get in touch with, completely in touch with nature, with trees, with air, with freedom, with animals. In fact, you must also see, I am sure you must have seen the film by Pablo Cesar, who has recently done, about 5-6 years ago, a film called Thinking of Him. It is about Tagore and Victoria Ocampo, where they figure, and there is a person who finally comes to Santiniketan to learn what he is trying to tell them, trying to tell the students how really they will understand the world, the real specificity of the world, not through wars, not through these kinds of definitions of nationalism that we do. No. Where we take away the creative power, the power of sacrifice, the power of suffering from all human beings and use it for the state. We should not do that. And this is what, in fact, Borges also appreciated. Borges, who never liked Tagore's poetry, he always thought it was a very subjective poetry, a second-class, third-class poetry. But he liked these particular things of Tagore. Now, all these things need to be integrated into anything that is written on Tagore and Ocampo, on Victoria. Imagine the kind of poems, Vijaya poems that he wrote. Now, all these poems, I do not know in the Bengali version how he will turn them, how he will change them, because they are written in the Bengali form. But could he provide a kind of a parallel to these poems, bringing in the Argentine scenario? Is that possible? This is only a suggestion, that's all. Now, I really don't want to go any more into this. I have spoken too much, and I'm sorry that I got carried away by this special theme on Victoria and Tagore, which has been one of most desirable, my very favorite topics in my life, in my work. That's all. Thank you so much.
I'd like to end here. I sincerely thank all of you on behalf of the Center for Comparative Literature, and also personally from my side, a very, very, very big thank you to Maria Rosa, to Professor Rafique-Chowdhury, Professor Ganguly. Thank you for being here. We are extremely honored, and also all those who are participating. Thank you very much for your time, for the deliberation. Thank you so much. And hopefully we will be able to continue with this virtual series. So please join us again in future. I will let you know about the details. Namaskar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
All the-
much.
Thank you
Bye.
so
All the
much.
best.
We'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
the best. All the best.
Thank you.
Yeah. Shama
All
sir,
the
thank
best.
you.
All
Thank
the
you.
best.
Okay.
Regards to everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Ciao.